Hi, this is Terry Bolt. I'm your instructor for CS6000 Computer Science Research Methods. I'm the Elpamar Professor of Innovation Security, and I've been a professor for many years, first at Columbia, then at Lehigh, and now I've been here for 14 years at UCCS. This particular course, we're going to get you to understand how to begin your process as a PhD student of getting deep into research. We'll give you many research papers to read. You're going to hear many research talks, and you're going to give a talk as well. In this class, if the paper is published or the talk that the paper is based on is published, you're free to discuss this anywhere, even online. However, we'll have some things in this class where it will be unpublished work the students are working on now, and it might have been submitted and currently under review, but it's not officially published. We'll remind you, and I'll remind you throughout the semester, treat that material as confidential. Don't show it to anyone outside of this class. Don't talk about it online. Obviously, you can do research and talk about it inside Blackboard as part of this class, but don't talk about it outside of this class because you don't want to have anyone get scooped. So in this class, we want you to be ready to put yourself in the mind of the reviewer, of the author, of the researcher, as the presenter, as you'll need to be each of these as part of your career, and we're going to get you to go through each of these. A little bit of ground rules for the course. First, try to understand. If at any point you don't think you understand something, you can ask me in class or ask me by email, text me, whatever, however you want to communicate, but don't go too long where you don't understand. Now, sometimes in my response, I'll tell you that that ambiguity that you're feeling is part of what we expect you to do. So then you'll need to move forward with a level of ambiguity, but once you understand that that's important, you'll be okay. Don't be afraid to comment on other people's work. Ask questions, but when you're making comments, you want to be constructive, be polite, and don't be afraid to criticize them constructively, but keep it constructive and polite. Important in this class is be prepared to do the work on time. You're going to have lots of reading and lots of work to do, and if you let it slide by, all of a sudden you'll have more than you'll be able to accomplish in a reasonable amount of time. Grading in this class will be 35% based on your writing assignments. You'll have a couple of iterations of your final paper that you'll be graded on, and some other small writing assignments. You're going to give an oral presentation of papers in this class. That'll be 15% of your grade. 50% of your grade is really the stuff you do every week. Class participation and discussion in the online journals, and 25% for your weekly journal. Your weekly journal is going to be your chance to reflect on the reading you've done this week, the insights that gives you with respect to your research, the questions it raises with respect to your research, and also questions and insights with respect to your own process as a researcher. I will go through those generally before class so that I have a better feeling where we are and can address more common issues in class, and I might also just comment on them individually. Class participation is your role when we're having presentations, being engaged in those, asking questions, answering questions if we ask them of you. And the online discussion will be where we talk about various research things. You'll find the weekly journal and the discussion forum inside Blackboard in your portal. And each week you're to do a weekly journal. I won't send out reminders. You are adults. This is not high school, so I'm not going to send out reminders that stuff is due. You have a weekly journal due every week. The discussion forum, there will be times when I'll tell you there's actually things due. Otherwise, you can also feel free to use that as a place to discuss among yourselves ideas, techniques, and tactics that you might find useful within this class. So this class is to get you involved in computer science research methods. So let's start with really, what's the role of research? What is it? Well, one of the things about research is it should be about some problem that encourages you, so it has enthusiasm for you, and is of interest for others. So you can do research. Computer science is an aesthetic field. You can study an algorithm that solves problems, any problem you want. But if no one else cares about the problem, or if you're not enthusiastic about the problem, it's really not going to lead in general to good research. So you want to find something that has a balance of what's encouraging and enthusiastic for you and still of interest to others. It is often generated from the thought, what we've got now or what's in the past isn't quite good enough. We can do better. And once you start thinking about how you can do better, you've already identified a problem and you've identified a need to make the solution to that problem better. Of course, it doesn't always lead that way. That's where it starts, and you wander through a path of what you can do to actually make things better, how you can actually get there, and how you can advance the work. But at least it starts from trying to make something better. It consists of work that leads to a meaningful contribution and evaluates that contribution. It's not enough for you to have built it. You have to evaluate it with respect to other people's work. And in general, it has to generate a better solution to the problem in some way that you can say it advances the state of the art. Sometimes that will be on a measure different than what the previous works have done, but that's okay. If, for example, the previous works were all about security and you decide that you have a solution that's just as secure or maybe just a little bit less secure, but adds significantly to users' privacy, then you can make a trade-off that advances the state of the art in some new dimension. If it's going to be research, it needs to be shared and used to have an impact. We're not interested in you writing the great American research paper, sticking it in a drawer so that no one else will ever see it. Then it's not really research. That's just idle curiosity. You're going to have to publish it, and we're going to talk a lot about how to get it published. And if it's going to be used, it probably will need to be reviewed before most people ever consider using it. Once your name is big enough, people might actually just try and use it because you're famous or some celebrity's famous, but in general, people want things that are reviewed before they're going to consider using it. So that means you're going to have to figure out how to get it through the reviewing process, one of the things we'll be talking about through this class. So I want to come back to a slightly broader definition of research. We're going to look at what Merriam-Webster defines it as. And one of the reasons to look at this is that many people come into this class thinking of research more related to what they did as research in previous classes, maybe in high school or some undergraduate writing classes. Webster defines it as careful or diligent search, studious inquiry or examination, or a collection of information about a particular subject. And while all of those are formally true, that's not what we're going to mean as research in computer science. We're now doing PhD level research. We have to do something that isn't just a study, but something that leads to new ideas, discoveries, and advancing the state of the art. So it's not enough to just do a diligent search. Your search has to lead to something. It can't just be a collection of information. It has to be a collection of information that is better than or advances what was known before it. So for us, it's a combination of investigation of past works and efforts that in the present that will help others in the future. Our goal is to do something that makes the world better after your research is done, and it has to do that by doing things better than what was done in the past. Research is also, for many people, sort of an odd collection of opposites. It's at the same time both fun and frustration. Parts of the time you'll be exhilarated. We sometimes describe it as a roller coaster. You'll be very up, and then you'll get rejections or whatever, and things will drive you down. Research is often a collection of small steps, and every now and then you got to step back and see the larger insights that come from all those steps. It's building on the works of others, but contributing your own work to that. If you don't relate it to other people's work, you won't get very far in doing your research. So in the end, it's finding and developing something that impacts the world. Okay? And here's a couple of things that research isn't. Maybe that'll help you understand where people often run into problems. Research isn't just playing with technology. It isn't having a good time putting together the latest state of the art and playing with it. You have to do more than that. It isn't book reports. It isn't just reading papers and reviews and whatever. In some fields, that kind of work, which is reading of others and interpreting them, is what they call research in some fields. But in computer science, that just doesn't cut it. You might end up having a summary paper or survey paper that's more like a book report. But in general, most research isn't going to be a survey. It isn't a programming project. Okay? It isn't just putting together code either for fun or for commercial products. Okay? And it definitely isn't doing what others have done. However, each of those are something that can be done as a part of your research. So research might include those things, but importantly, your research will have to be new, novel, something that advances the state of the art, not just a combination of those things above. So who does research? Well, most of you are PhD students. Some of you might be master's students, and you guys will be doing research. Generally, the standards are higher for PhD students. Even higher will be researchers at universities, postdocs, and faculty members who not only do research, they often lead other people in the pursuit of research. Some of you will go on to be faculty members and postdocs at other universities. Others of you will go to become researchers in industry. You work as research scientists and many other technical jobs that really use the PhD from a research point of view. There's also the possibility for undergraduates to do research, but undergraduate research is a little bit different. So when you look at who does research, we can look at it from 2 points of view. Individuals get involved, but generally lots of computer science research is team-oriented. Teams almost always make the process easier and, in my view, more fun because you can get feedback from other team members on what you're doing. You have multiple skill sets and you can get a division of labor, so it allows you to accomplish different things and much more things because you've divided the labor across. And each member can work to their own strengths. So when you think about doing research as you're pursuing your career, think about not just what you can do, but who's got a good team that you might be a part of and how you might be able to work across those. So as I said, the scopes of research, or what you do as a researcher, is a little bit different. For PhD students, we have higher expectations. You're expected to really contribute at the global, at the world level. You're going to be doing background investigations on all past work, not just 1 or 2 past papers that you found relevant, but all the past relevant work. And you're going to be making meaningful additions to the world's knowledge. You're going to be publishing on the world stage. It doesn't matter that you're here at UCCS. The world's your stage, and that's where you will perform. If you're an MS student in this class, you're going to be really contributing it more at the local and national level. Your background investigations will really be at the university up to the world level. Ideally, you can be doing the same as a PhD student, but you might be looking at a much more narrower problem, and you're going to make a meaningful addition to the university up to the world level of knowledge. So you might, for example, be doing a comparison of 2 things that have never been compared, but for which most people expect they know what the answers are, or for which even if the answers aren't known, it's not going to significantly advance the state of the art to know how to compare those 2 tools. And for an undergraduate research, they're often really in the process to get in, learning what the process is and get started on the path. Again, they can be doing projects that will be more difficult to publish, but still are adding to the knowledge base in a smaller level. So we can look at what kinds of research people can do. We can talk about qualitative versus quantitative research. In quantitative research, we use mathematical models, software, statistical analysis, formulaic or numerical analysis to analyze results. And the main approach are either discovery, analysis, looking at causality, trying to do predictions, generation of findings, and the results are often of the form, quantitative form. This solution is n% better using some metric. Lots of computer science research, in fact I would say the majority of computer science research tends to be quantitative and is an advancement where something is better than a previous solution in some dimension that is important for what the problem is. In qualitative research, as its name suggests, it's not quantitative. We're using non-numeric techniques to analyze results. So the main approaches are sometimes similar in terms of their going after discovery, but more often there's things like analogy, understanding and relationships to other problems, and the results are often, here's a new problem, and here's a way to solve it. And since it's a new problem, there is no real comparison to a previous solution. It's here's a way of solving it. Within that, you can mix the 2 and you can combine quantitative analysis after you've had your new problem. You can say, well, here's an obvious way to solve it, but here's a much better way to solve it, and then have a little bit of the 2 together. So when you're looking at qualitative research in some areas of computer science, this would also include things where you're really looking at users and user satisfactions, which may have a quantitative statistical analysis point of view, or it may be more qualitative. Here's what people think about the problem, the security, the privacy, how easy it is to use. There are some other techniques, things we call the pragmatic and mixed methods, where you don't really start out saying I'm going to do it one way or another. It's generally problem-driven. The approach will then combine some analysis that's quantitative and qualitative, using the right tool for a given task. Again, looking at things like user interfaces, you might have some parts of it that are quantitative, where you're doing statistical analysis on user preferences, but also qualitative approaches where you read through or analyze the text of their answers to get qualitative interpretations that give you insights as to what mattered in the answers. Finally, there's an area or type of research that is sometimes used, you will find it now and again, called advocacy or participatory research methods, where you really start off with a predefined agenda. It's often focused on improving the outcomes for a group of generally marginalized people. So if I'm trying to do something to improve privacy, in fact, you may not know exactly what it is, but you have some predefined agenda of, I want to advocate for this, people who don't have certain abilities to get protect their privacy in some countries or whatever. The techniques here have to be a little bit different. They may draw on either quantitative or qualitative approaches in doing it, but you're really trying to solve a problem for which there's no easy or direct way of measuring it, because you have this predefined agenda and you're generally working with larger groups of people for which it becomes difficult to do. Lots of areas of social science will have this. If you're doing something that crosses over with computer science applied to social sciences, psychology, and some areas like privacy, you might run into some of these. In general, these are very difficult areas to be successful at if you're a starting researcher who doesn't have ties to large groups that have access to the kinds of data and policy issues that would be addressed by these. So there's a couple of approaches to CS research. Coming back to the sort of more common approach, you sort of attack a known problem, you find and compare tools to solve it. And your goal is to find, compare, or develop tools that allow you to solve the problem better than anyone else has solved it before in some way in which you're going to solve it. Or the other main approach is formalize a new problem and then attack it. And you'll probably along the way have to make up something to compare against, because people expect some level of comparison. But in general, if it's a new problem, a big part of the effort is formalizing what that new problem is, arguing why it's important, relating it to previous problems, and then coming up with solutions to it. All too often, you'll see people who want to look at it as you want to build a new tool and test it on your own private data. And while that might be appropriate for an undergraduate or a master's level student, that is rarely PhD level research, because it's not replicable if you've tested it on your own private data, and if you have a new tool and you're not comparing it to anyone else, no one knows how much you've really done. So with all of that, we've talked about lots of approaches. I'm now going to tell you my number one predictor of how successful will students be doing at research. And the answer might surprise you. I think the number one thing that I use to predict how well students will do at research is how much they read high-quality papers and ask good questions from and about those papers. If you're reading a lot and you're asking good questions, you will find good research. If you sit around thinking, I'm going to think up new good ideas, and you're not reading what other people are doing, you're probably not going to find good research ideas. So the next couple of lectures, the next couple of videos within this lecture, and then actually over the next couple of lectures, we'll be looking at how to do this reading, what to read, how to find some of those research ideas. So don't worry yet if you don't know how to find or read good quality papers or ask good questions. We'll be talking about that. This ends our first video for CS6000, but there are 3 videos for today, so please make sure